Welcome back to my channel, Math and Language, and this is James, your Math and Language instructor, and we're going to discuss physics, kinematics at one dimension. So before we head on to the problem solving or word problems, let's discuss the kinematics formulas muna. So first one, we have the displacement is equal to velocity times time, or D is equal to Vt. Alright, second one will be displacement is equal to initial velocity multiplied by time plus the quantity 0.5 times acceleration times t square or time. Third one naman tayo, Vf. So that will be the final velocity is equal to initial velocity plus 2 times acceleration times displacement. And yung fourth one, displacement is equal to the quantity initial velocity plus final velocity over 2. Tapos yung sagot doon, i-multiply by time. And last formula natin will be final velocity is equal to initial velocity plus acceleration times time. So, paano natin malalaman yung gagamitin nating formula? So, depende pa rin yun dun sa problem na ibibigay. For example, kung pinapahanap sa yung acceleration, wag mong gagamitin tong formula na d is equal to vt. Kasi wala din yung acceleration eh. And you can use this one, yung d is equal to vt, kapag narinig mo yung mga simpleng problem lang na pinapahanap yung distance at a constant speed and may binigay na time. Constant speed of 9.6 meters per second and at 3 seconds ano yung displacement. So, pwede magamitin tong formula na to. Sa pangalawa naman, wag mo gagamitin to pag pinapahanap sa'yo yung final velocity. Third one, wag mo gagamitin pag wala yung time. And fourth one, pag wala yung acceleration. At hindi na constant speed yung tanong. And last, wag mo gagamitin yung formula na to pag pinapahanap sa'yo yung displacement. So let's start with the first problem. A truck is moving at a constant speed of 30 meters per second. How many seconds will it take to travel 10 kilometers? So first step natin, kailangan natin mag-construct ng table with the given and formulas para magiging tulong natin to para masagot yung tanong. So first is acceleration, not applicable kasi hindi naman siya hinahanap at hindi siya given. Pangalawa is displacement. So that will be 10 kilometers. Ang time ang hinahanap kaya naglagay ko siya ng question mark. Pang-apat, final velocity, not applicable. Kasi constant speed eh. So, we just need the simple velocity lang. So, nilagay ko na lang siya sa initial velocity of 30 meters per second. So, ang tanong, anong gagamitin nating formula? So, we have distance and the velocity. At ang pinapahanap sa atin yung time. So, sakto, we can use the first formula. Displacement is equal to Vt. So, lagay ko na yung given and formula. However, mapapansin mo, nakalagay dito 10 kilometers at yung velocity mo is 30 meters per second. Hindi nagkakasundo yung units. So, kailangan mo munang i-convert yung 10 kilometers to meters. So, that will be, kung may 10 kilometers ka, ang isang kilometer is 1,000 meters. So, that will be 10,000 meters. Pag okay na yung measurement natin, na-convert na, we can proceed to the solution. So, 10 kilometers is equal to 30 meters per second times time. So to get time, divide both sides by 30 and the answer will be 333.33 seconds. So dun sa tanong na, how many seconds will it take to travel 10 kilometers for a truck is moving at a constant speed of 30 meters per second? The answer will be 333.33 seconds. Let's move to the second problem. A jet plane accelerates down a runway at 4.5 meters per second square for 35.8 seconds until it finally leaps off the ground. Determine the distance traveled before takeoff. So again, list all the given and the formulas. Acceleration mo is 4.5 meters per second square. Always remember, pag acceleration, meters per second square yan. Displacement ang hinahanap natin. Determine the distance or yung displacement. So, magkaibang distance sa displacement So, displacement ang gagamitin natin dito. Time is 35.8 seconds. And yung final velocity not applicable kasi hindi siya given at hindi naman siya hinahanap. And lastly, we have the initial velocity which is 0. Okay, question. Bakit nga ba 0 meters per second ang initial velocity mo? Mapapansin mo sa tanong, a jet plane accelerates down a runway until it finally lifts off the ground. So, nagsimula yung jet plane at 0 meters muna per second eh. So, hindi pa siya gumagalaw eh. So, yung initial velocity mo. Mag-accelerate pa lang. Palipad pa lang yung aeroplano mo. So, list all the givens and the formula. So, solution na tayo. Displacement is equal to 0. Bakit 0? Kasi 0 times mo ng 35.8, that will be 0. Initial velocity times time eh. Plus 0.5 times mo ng 4.5 meters per second squared. That's the acceleration. Bibase ko lang siya sa formula. Nagsasubstitute lang ako. At yung time natin is 35.8 seconds. So, i-square mo yun. Tapos, doon mo siya i-times sa 4.5 at 0.5. And the displacement will be 2,883.69 meters. So, sa tanong na, a jet plane accelerates down a runway at 4.5 meters per second square for 35.8 seconds until it finally lifts off the ground, ano daw yung distance or displacement traveled before takeoff? So, that will be 2,883.69 meters. Next one. A car accelerates uniformly from rest to a speed of 9.2 meters per second over a distance of 35.4 meters. Determine the acceleration of the car. So again, first step, list all the given and the formulas. Acceleration natin ang hinahanap, so question mark siya. We have the displacement of 35.4 meters. And yung time, not applicable. Hindi siya given at hindi rin siya hinahanap. Final velocity mo is 9.2 meters per second. And the initial velocity is 0 meters per second. Okay, bakit nga ba ulit ang initial velocity mo ay 0 meters per second? Pag binase natin sa problem, a car accelerates uniformly from rest. Yun yung keyword mo, from rest. So, aandar pa lang yung kotse. Diba? So, initial velocity mo ay 0 meters per second. Dahil meron tayong displacement na 35.4 meters, final velocity and the initial velocity, at ang pinapahanap sa atin dito is acceleration, we can use a third formula, which is the final velocity squared is equal to the initial velocity squared plus 2 times acceleration times displacement. Gusto ko na yung given and the formula, and let's proceed to the solution. So that will be, final velocity is 9.2 meters per second. So, i-square ko yan, that will be 84.64 meters square per second square. Sa kanang equation naman, we have the initial velocity square. So, that will be 0. So, 0, square mo yon 0 pa rin. So, alamin na lang natin yung 2AB. 2 times acceleration times the displacement, which is 35.4 meters. So, that will be 70.8 meters times the acceleration. Ngayon, isolate natin yung acceleration, divide both sides by 70.8, and the acceleration will be 1.9195 meters per second square. Alright, so let's go to the fourth problem. A truck accelerates uniformly from 20.1 meters per second to 39.8 meters per second in 2.6 seconds. Determine the acceleration of the truck and the distance traveled. So, first step again, lista ko muna yung given and the formula. And we have for the acceleration in yung hinahanap. So, that will be question mark. Also, for the displacement. So, that will be question mark. And for time, that will be 2.6 seconds. And the final velocity will be 39.8 meters per second. And lastly, for the initial velocity, that will be 20.1 meters per second. So, anong gagamitin nating formula? So, the first one, we cannot use it kasi pinapanap sa atin yung acceleration. Second one, hindi natin pwedeng gamitin yan kasi walang final velocity dun sa formula. Meron tayong given na final velocity. Third one, hindi rin pwedeng gamitin kasi wala tayong time dyan sa formula. And sa fourth one, we can use that one. Even wala pa yung acceleration, but we can find the displacement. And yung fifth one, pwede rin natin gamitin kahit wala yung displacement. As long, gagamitin natin yung dalawang formula. So, I'll start by finding the acceleration. So, gamitin natin yung formula na final velocity is equal to initial velocity plus acceleration times time. So I'll substitute the values. So first one, we have sa kaliwang equation that will be 39.8 meters per second. That's the final velocity equals 20.1 meters per second plus acceleration times 2.6 seconds because that is the time. So algebraically, 39.8 meters per second minus 20.1 meters per second is equal to 19.7 meters per second. Divide both sides by 2.6 and the answer will be 7.58 over second square. So, yung sa tanong na, a truck accelerates uniformly from 20.1 meters per second to 39.8 meters per second in 2.6 seconds. Yung acceleration niya is 7.58 meters per second square. Right, next one, we have to find the distance traveled. So we have the formula, d is equal to initial velocity plus mo ng final velocity over 2, tapos yung sagot niyan, i-multiply natin by time. So substitute mo lang yung values, we have 20.1 meters per second plus 39.8 meters per second over 2, yung sagot dyan, the times mo ng 2.6, so the answer will be 77.87 meters. So yun yung distance na traveled ng truck uniformly from 20.1 meters per second to 39.8 meters per second in 2.6 seconds. Alright, fifth problem tayo. A plane has a takeoff speed of 60 meters per second and requires 2,000 meters to reach that speed. Determine the acceleration of the plane and the time required to reach this speed. So again, first step, list all the given. We're finding for the acceleration. So question mark ko muna siya. Displacement is 2,000 meters and the time is question mark din. Kasi yung nahanap. So final velocity is 60 meters per second and the initial velocity will be 0 meters per second. So nagagamitin nating formula. So first formula, hindi natin pwedeng gamitin dahil meron tayong final and initial velocity which is given. Pangalawang formula, di na natin pwede siyang gamitin kasi meron tayong final velocity and sa formula walang final velocity doon. Pangatlo, pwede natin gamitin kasi meron tayong displacement, meron tayong final velocity and initial velocity. At hinahanap natin yung acceleration. So isang variable lang yung nawawala and we can use that to find the acceleration. Fourth one, yes, we can use that kasi ang time lang naman yung wala natin. So, meron tayong displacement, final, and initial velocity. So, let's solve for the acceleration first. Let's have the formula, the square of the final velocity is equal to the square of the initial velocity plus 2AD. So, let's substitute the values. 60 square meter square over s square is equal to 0 plus 2 times acceleration times 2,000 meters. So algebraically, isolate the A. So we have 3,600 meters square over s square is equal to 4,000 meters. Divide both sides by 4,000. And the answer will be, the acceleration is 0.9 meters per second square. Alright, so time naman ang hinahanap natin. So we can use this formula. D is equal to initial plus final velocity over 2. And the answer to that one, let's multiply it by time. So let's substitute the values. We have 2,000 meters is equal to 0 plus 60 meters per second over 2. And the answer, let's multiply it by time. So algebraically, divide both sides by 30. And the answer will be 66.67 seconds. Alright, let's go to problem solving number 6. A limousine travels at a constant speed of 32 meters per second for 5 seconds. It begins to accelerate at a rate of 3 meters per second square for 6 seconds, and then maintains that speed for another 20 seconds. Finally, it slows down to rest in 20 seconds. How far did the limousine travel during the course of this entire problem? So, lagay ko muna lahat ng given. Acceleration, not applicable kasi hindi naman siya hinahanap at wala tayo niyan. Displacement, question mark. So, yun yung hinahanap natin. Time is 5 seconds. Velocity, no, we don't need that because constant speed eh. So we're just going to use the normal velocity lang. And so lalagay ko na siya sa initial velocity of 32 meters per second. So ang formula na gagamitin natin, take note, ang tanong muna dito, dun muna tayo sa first part of the question. A limousine travels at a constant speed of 32 meters per 5 seconds. So gagamitin ko is D is equal to Vt. Again, the problem is, how far did the limousine travel during the course of the entire problem? So, iisa-isain ko yung problem. Kaya, distance 1, distance 2, distance 3, distance 4, kukunin ko yung total distance. So, dun muna tayo sa first part, yung naka-red, hanapin ko yung distance niyan. So, first part, lista ko yung given and the formula and substitute the values. So, D is equal to 32 meters over S, or seconds, times mo ng 5 seconds. Maka-cancel out yung seconds. And that will be 32 times 5 and the distance is 160 meters. That's the first part. Meron na tayong D1. May tatlo pa tayo. Alright, so let's go to the second part of the problem. It begins to accelerate at a rate of 3 meters per second square for 6 seconds. So, for that one, kailangan natin mahanap yung final velocity. Remember, ang initial mo is 32 meters per second. Yun yung kaninang part ng problem. So, dahil nag-accelerate ka, magkakaroon ka ng final velocity. Diba? So, that will be, yun yung hanapin muna natin. As well as the displacement also. So, let's start by finding the final velocity. So, ang gagamitin natin formula dyan, that will be final velocity is equal to initial velocity plus acceleration times time. Let's substitute the values. Final velocity is equal to 32 meters per second plus 3 meters per second square times mo ng 6 seconds. Alright? So, final velocity is equal to 32 meters plus 18 meters. So, the final velocity will be 50 meters per second. Okay, the rationale behind bakit pala hinahanap pa natin yung final velocity at distance lang naman yung hinahanap. Yung tanong kasi dito, dugtong-dugtong yan. So, magagamit natin tong final velocity sa next part ng problem. Okay? So, hanapin na natin yung distance for this second part ng problem. So, again, we have the acceleration as 3 meters per second square at displacement yung hinahanap. Time is equal to 6 seconds. And the final velocity will be 50 meters per second. And the initial velocity is 32 meters per second. So the formula that we can use this one na lang. D is equal to the initial velocity plus final over 2 and the answer will be multiplied by time. So let's substitute the values kasi mas madali yan eh. Pwede naman yung iba kasi ito mas madali itong gamitin. So displacement is equal to 32 meters per second plus mo ng 50 meters per second over 2, yung answer dyan times natin ng 6. So yung distance natin or displacement will be 246 meters. Again, iba pa rin ang distance sa displacement. Kaso dahil di naman nagbago yung direction, isang direction lang naman tayo, so same value lang naman yung distance and displacement. Magkakaiba lang yan pag yung distance and displacement mo, pag nag-iba ng direction. So dahil one direction lang naman tayo, so pares lang yung value ng distance and displacement. So I just would like to reiterate. So going back to the problem, so the second part of the problem, ang distance natin ay 246 meters. Let's go to the pangatlong part. And then maintains that speed for another 20 seconds. Note of the keyword, maintains that speed. So yung velocity niya from the second part of the problem, yun yung gagamitin natin. So ang second velocity natin, that is 50 meters per second. So, ito yung gagamitin nating velocity. And, yung problem natin is just a simple velocity lang naman, maintains that speed or constant speed, diba? We can use the formula D is equal to Vt. So, distance is equal to 50 meters per second, multiply it to 20 seconds, and the answer will be 1,000 meters. So, ito yung pangatlong distance natin sa tanong. Ang huling tanong natin is, finally, it slows down to rest in 20 seconds. So let's list the given. Acceleration, not applicable kasi hindi naman siya hinahanap at wala tayo yan. Displacement or distance, yun yung hinahanap natin. Time is 20 seconds and the final velocity is 0 meters per second. Bakit 0 meters per second? Pabagal na yung kotse. So, ang tanong dito, down to rest eh. Take note of the word down to rest. So, ang final velocity mo, titigil ka, syempre, ang final mo, 0 meters per second na. Ang initial mo, that will be 50 meters per second. Kasi yung sa pangatlong part, constant speed ka pa rin eh. Diba? So, yung gagamitin natin initial. So, ang final mo will be 0. So, ang gagamitin nating formula dito, dahil meron tayong time, final, and initial velocity, at ang hinahanap natin is the displacement or distance, we can use the formula d is equal to initial plus final velocity over 2, and the answer will be multiplied by time. So let's substitute the values. So that will be d is equal to 50 meters per second plus 0 meters per second over 2, and multiply the answer by 20 seconds, and d is equal to 500 meters. So how far did the limousine travel during the course of this entire problem? So i-add mo lang yung apat na distance natin. So we have the first distance is 160 meters plus 246 meters for the distance 2. And for distance 3, that will be 1,000 meters. And the last distance will be 500 meters. So the total distance dito sa problem na to will be 1,906 meters. Alright, so let's go to the last problem. Problem solving number 7. Two cars are 500 kilometers apart and are traveling at the same direction with a velocity of 30 kilometers per hour and 80 kph. Tanong dito, when will they meet? Pangalawa, how far will the faster car travel during this time period? I-visualize muna natin yung tanong. So, may naghahabulan ng dalawang kotse at 500 kilometers apart sila. Yung isang kotse mo is 80 kilometers per hour at yung isang kotse mo is 30 kilometers per hour. Kailan daw sila magkikita? Lalagay ko ng 80 kilometers per hour sa car A at yung 30 kph sa car B. Kasi kailangan sila magkita, di ba? E napag-iwanan yung car A. So, dapat mas mabilis siya. You can use a simple formula that will be d is equal to Vt. So, dun sa car A, that will be d is equal to 80 times time. Okay? Hindi natin alam pa yung time. So, ginawa ko muna ng 80t. For the car B naman, same naman din siya. D is equal to Vt. So, 30 kilometers per hour times mo ng time, 30t. Remember, ang displacement will be final position minus initial position. Remember, ang initial position mo ay 0 kasi yun yung starting point eh. So, the final ang hinahanap natin. So, that will be x of f minus x of I is equal to 80t, or x of f minus 0 is equal to 80t. So, matitira is the final position is equal to 80t. Next naman, sa car B, distance is equal to Vt din, di ba? So, the final position minus initial position. Final position mo ang hinahanap. But, ang initial position mo, that will be 500 kilometers. Nakalamang ka na kasi ng 500 kilometers. So, algebraically, the final position will be 500 kilometers plus mo yung 30t. Ngayon, pag i-equal natin yung dalawa na yan, yung dalawang final position nila, so, magiging sagot, or magiging equation natin is 80t, 80 times time is equal to 500 kilometers plus mo ng 30t. Algebraically, that will be 50t is equal to 500 kilometers and time will be 10 hours. So, makikita sila na by 10 hours pa. Right, next part of the question. How far will the faster car travel during this time period? So, makikita natin, we can use the formula again, d is equal to Vt. So, d is equal to, the velocity is 80 kilometers per hour, times natin yung time, kasi alam na natin yung time, that will be 10 hours. So, that will be 80 times 10 will be 800 kilometers. So, that's for the car A. For car B naman, that will be d is equal to 30 kilometers per hour times mo ng 10 hours, and the answer will be 300 kilometers. So, let's check kung yung answers natin, if it makes sense. So, visually makikita mo, gumawa ko ng start and finish line. So, for car A, 80 kilometers per hour at 800 kilometers mabubuo niya para lang magkita sila ng car B. So sa car B naman, papansin mo na una siya 500 kilometers at magkikita sila pag nakabuo na siya ng 300 kilometers by 30 kilometers per hour. Mo 500 plus 300 kilometers, that will be 800 kilometers. So equal sila. So that means tama yung sagot natin. And that's the end of the video about kinematics one dimension. Next video natin will be about kinematics free fall. And if you would like to comment or suggest another math and language video or kung may assignment kayo, please comment down below. Again, this is James, your math and language instructor. Please like and subscribe. Thank you. Bye-bye.